Hi guys and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Wanda. In today's video, we'll be talking about ETFs. There are currently 85 ETFs on EasyEquities year to date. As I'm speaking, it's October of 2021. And having that many ETFs to choose from could be challenging. So I thought, let me do a video to try and help you guys to figure out which ETFs you need to choose from the two providers that are providing the same ETF. For example, the Sygnia S&P 500. Also, there is Coreshare S&P 500. So in as much as you're interested in the S&P 500, you still need to know from the two providers who are providing the same product or who are tracking the same index, which one do you choose? When I started, I never really did this because I didn't know about it. I just thought, since I'm interested in the S&P 500, I went and I looked for S&P 500, and whichever one popped up first, that's the one which I chose. But there is a difference between the two service providers or the two ETF providers, right? So Coreshare does not track ETF the same way as Sygnia track the ETF, and that has an implication on the cost of managing that ETF, right? So there's like different factors which we need to look into before we can just randomly choose an ETF because we like the index, right? So that's what I'll be doing in this video. I'll be using my laptop to do the analysis to demonstrate how to compare the two services providers of ETFs that is tracking the same index, right? So before we can get into it, I just want to remind you guys to like, comment, and subscribe if you like the content of this video. And I actually like it if you guys drop some comments on the highlights or just further questions on things which were not clear, because well, this video can only be certain minutes, right? So that you don't get bored. So if I omitted something or something was not clear, feel free to drop the comment, right? So let's get into the tool which I will be using before I can show you on the screen how to go about it. So EasyEquities, has a tool called EasyETF. This tool helps you to narrow down ETFs and figure out the one you like. For an example, there is a geographic differentiator, right? You could be looking for what is called domestic ETFs, which is ETFs that are listed on that current country of the stock exchange in which you are based. For an example, South Africa, right? And you could be looking for foreign ETF, meaning that it's for everything else outside of South Africa. You could be looking for asset classes, right? You could be looking for ETFs that covers commodity. You could be looking for ETF that covers financial companies or tech companies. It allows you to do all those filters for you to be able to identify the one which you like, just to simplify the process of choosing an ETF, right? So this portion that I just described is found on EasyETF under ETF Finder. So the one that I'm gonna do, it's called Compare ETF, right? So it allows you to compare two different ETFs. So as for me, I'll be doing the top 40, and I will use Cetrix, I'll use One Invest, and I'll also use Ashburton, right? So let's get into it. So you will go to EasyETF, and you will go to the EasyETF like I mentioned. So here is the page. I'll just quickly run through the page first before I can show you guys how to compare ETFs, just so you're familiar with this tool, because I think it's one of the best tools for ETFs, right? So if you are interested in ETFs, you should be familiar with this page because it helps a lot. As I mentioned, it also helps you to narrow down ETFs in general, not only comparing. So you have this, which is called ETF Finder, where you can click on ETF Finder, scroll down. Like I said, there's 85 ETFs currently on EasyEquities. And, you can filter them down with the different providers. If you want to see what ETFs One Invest has, or APSA, Ashburton, etc., they are different providers of ETFs. You have that to choose from. So if you know what you're looking for, maybe let's say you're looking for a Citrix top 40 ETF, you can just come and search it here, or you can come and click on Citrix here and then filter it like that. And then they have asset classes, right? So ETFs, in simple terms, is grouped equities, or it's stocks that are grouped together to follow a certain index or a certain industry or a certain sector. So you can come here and choose if you want ETF that is tracking the stocks or commodities or fixed income, or maybe that is tracking cash or real estate, right? So you can find ETFs that are tracking gold, or ETFs that are focused on performance of gold, like that. And then region, I think I mentioned this, you have different regions in which, ETFs cover. So you can find companies that are doing well in Africa, like I said. So this region helps you with that. And then there's dividends, like companies that are focused on dividends, paying dividends, and and so forth and so forth. And those that don't pay, depending on what you're looking for. There's also companies that look into the risk profile. They, in as much as ETFs are diversified, you still have more aggressive ETFs, and you also have more stable ETFs that are conservative or too low in terms of risk profile. For an example, tech companies today are generally booming, right? But they are also a high risk, because most of those companies are not well established as yet. Their product is not proven to the market. So they are risky, but also they are possibly high return kind of companies. So they fall more on the aggressive side, right? And then some follow fund strategy, some follow the expense ratio. We're going to talk about this when we compare the ETF. Some follow fund size, right? So this is what we're going to be doing today for this video. So like I said, I will be tracking the top 40s. So I'm coming here and I will do Citrix. I'm looking for top 40. And then we have One Invest top 40 as well that I'm looking for. One Invest, let's make sure it's the correct one, because we want to make sure that we're comparing apples with apples, right? Because what helps does it have for us to compare dividends paying ETF versus the top 40? So I want to compare the top 40s so that we're comparing the same the ETFs that are tracking the same index. You can still compare two different ETFs that has nothing to do with each other, maybe just for you to see how they've been performing in the past few years. So, and then we can do Ashburton as well, top 40 for Ashburton, here it is. So these three ETFs that I've selected here, they are tracking the top 40 index, right? And as you can see, it's mentioned here that they are tracking the top 40 index, and they are tracking the top 40 index, and they're tracking the top 40 index. So these ETFs are tracking the same thing. So what normally happens is that each ETF has a fund manager, and that fund manager tries to make sure that their ETF perform as similar as possible to the top 40 companies in South Africa. So the top 40 is not a stock, is not a share, it's just a trend. So what those managers do is that they compile those shares in a basket and they make it a stock, right? And they make sure that those stocks that they have picked on the top 40 perform the same way as that trend of the top 40. I hope I'm making sense, right? So there are key things that you need to look into. I'm not going to go through everything because there's just a couple of things which I think you need to be careful about. You need to look into that can help you to decide very fast, right? Also, I'm trying to not make this video very long. Okay. So also one thing that makes ETFs very good is that they have something which is called the fact sheet. So in a fact sheet, you can get clarity of everything that you need, almost everything that you need to know about an ETF that can help you to decide whether this ETF is good or not. So the information they're demonstrating here on the screen, it is from the fact sheet. Okay, so like I mentioned, firstly, they provide you with a description of what the ETF objective is about, and then they tell you the price. This is one of the important things, right? The current prices, right? So Cetrix top 40 is currently selling at 60 Rand when 63, and the One Invest it's selling at 62 Rand 0.01 per share, and the Ashburton at 61.93 cents. And as you can see, the Cetrix one looks cheaper, right? But we still need to see if there are other factors that we can look into. So if you want to check the fact sheet, like I mentioned, you can click on view, and I'm going to do another video on how to read a fact sheet of ETFs as well, right? So let's go down. One of the most important things that I think people kind of omit and they don't check, it's the total expense ratio. I think this is one of the most important factors that you need to look into when you're checking which ETF you need to buy, and also when you're comparing ETFs, right? So total expense ratio, it's the amount or the cost that is associated with managing that index, that ETF, sorry. So this is how much you get charged per annum for owning that ETF. So you need to make sure that you buy an ETF that is cheaper to manage and it tracks the index closely, right? Meaning that the performance is good, but also the cost is low, right? So total expense ratio for the Cetrix Top 40 is 0.1%. And for the One Invest is 0.29%, and for the Ashburton one is 0.13%, right? I think overall, from what we have done currently, I see that the One Invest Top 40 is selling at 62 Rand, which is expensive. It's also expensive to manage. So you're going to pay so much money for this to be managed, and you're going to buy it at a higher price, which really doesn't make sense. So for me, One Invest, I'm already like canceling it out of the three because it's expensive to manage, right? Because the difference between this, at least this 0.13 and 0.10, they are similar. The difference is not that big. Maybe it can be, maybe the cost of this One Invest can be compensated by the performance. So let's see if they're performing as good as their management cost. Okay. So then you come to the performance side. Right. On the performance side, you want to look into how it has been doing. You can check from the past week, you can check from a month, you can check from the year, you can check 5 years, you can check year to date, you can check since inception, right? So I think when you look into since inception, you should also look into how long this ETF has been listed, right? So for me, I start with, like 1 year, 3 year, and then 5 years, and then I check year to date as well. So in the past year, these top 40 performed really well because it was at 22.98%. This is the Cetrix top 40. And the One Invest one was at 22.75. Still lower performance compared to the Cetrix, but Cetrix is managed at a lower cost, right? And then for the Ashburton one is 22.99%. Performance, which makes it the highest one, but versus the Cetrix one, they're a lot similar, so they are only different by 0.01%. So you can do the calculation to see how much difference this cost and the performance are different, right? Because also you might find that this 22.99% is actually a lot higher when you're looking into the amount in which you're investing, right? So far, I'm just leaning towards the Cetrix top 40 because, well, lower cost, lower price is selling at 60 Rand. All of them are selling at 61 and 62. And also it has the lowest cost and it has the highest performance. Okay, second highest, right? In the past 3 years, maybe let's check further before we can decide which one we want. In the past 3 years, Cetrex did 12%, and the One Invest did 11.47%, and the Ashburton did 12.07%. I think here the vibe which I'm getting is that Ashburton is doing well at tracking the top 40 index, right? They're doing well, and you can see by the performance they've been leading from the top three, from these three service providers or top 40 ETFs. This is the one which is performing very well. So possibilities that they understand this ETF well and they rebalance it well. That's why they're getting the performance they're getting. Year to date, they are doing 15.19%, and One Invest is doing 15.10%, and Cetrex is doing 15.24%, which is leading currently year to date, right? And I just want to highlight that the reason why the cost of an ETF is so important is simply because it will eat into your returns, right? So that 0.1% from Cetrex and 0.13% from Ashburton, that is the total cost per annum, it will have to be deducted from your returns. So you need to account that when you're deciding which ETF you need to look into. Hence, the total expense ratio is so important, right? So people go around and buy products which have higher service cost or management cost, and that management cost eats into their return, and they don't get to see the benefit or the good return that an account or a fund has done, right? So you need to make sure that you select a fund or an ETF or whatever it is in finance, in an investment account that has as minimal management fee as possible and with good returns as well. And that's what we were doing in this exercise. You can go down and actually compare the graphs and see, it's the same as the performance numbers that we were reading. It's just a visual demonstration of it. Then it will show you that, since they are tracking the same index, the shape of the graph is similar, but it does differ. Hence, we looked into the numbers just to see how different they are. So that's it from my side. I hope you learned something, and I hope this is going to make your investment journey on the ETFs a lot better. So all the best. Cheers.